and rhetorical appeals. We're going to shift our writing focus to the mode of argumentation or persuasion. Most types of essays fall under this umbrella. It's important to think about argumentation in the academic sense and to separate it from the way that we use argument in our everyday culture, which is not very exact. We might use it to describe a fight or a quarrel or a debate. This is not the case in academia. In the academic world, an argument requires claims. A claim is an arguable statement. It may or may not be true. For example, college students should create a time management schedule to help them succeed. This is an arguable statement. Someone could plausibly argue that a time management schedule is not necessary. Arguments require a set of claims, at least two, with one claim supporting the other. So, for example, a supporting claim for the previous one could be if students mark which days and times they will complete homework, they are less likely to miss assignments. What is not a claim is something we might describe as a statement of fact. For example, approximately 6,000 students go to Napa Valley College. That's not plausible to argue with that, right? That's a statistic that we can back up. When I said most essays fall under argumentation, it's because essay structure requires a thesis and support. Topic sentences or point sentences express an idea, interpret, make meaning, and often express something a reader could agree or disagree with. The thesis also presents something that must be proven. So taken together, a thesis sentence with at least one supporting point sentence make up the bare minimum of an argument. Stronger arguments offer multiple point sentences for support. Stronger arguments offer proof, facts, stories, data, and more. Persuasive arguments use a balance of rhetorical appeals. What is a rhetorical appeal? Rhetoric is the art of persuasion. What makes an argument persuasive? The goal of persuasion is to change others' point of view or to move others to take action. The idea of persuasion as an art form originated from Aristotle, who lived in 384 to 322 BC. He was Greek, and along with other Greeks, he wrote on the subject of rhetoric during a time when orators played a significant role in Western culture. There were not a lot of people who knew how to write or knew how to read. Arguments took place on a stage and were spoken. Usually it was someone speaking for a long period of time. So Aristotle came up with some strategies to aid in persuasion while speaking to an audience, and these apply to writing as well. His techniques are focused on three appeals. He taught that a speaker's ability to persuade is based on how well the speaker appeals to his or her audience in three different areas. One we refer to as logos, which are logical appeals. Another is ethos, which are ethical appeals. And another is pathos, which are emotional appeals. And he came up with this idea of the rhetorical triangle. To have a successful argument, you want to make all three of these appeals and make sure your argument has a purpose. Logos is the part of an argument based on facts, evidence, and reasons. Using logos means appealing to the reader's sense of what is logical. One way to appeal to logic is just the unfolding of the sequence of ideas themselves, the supporting points that connect to the thesis. They provide the structure of the argument. The basic principle is that the supporting points should provide good related points for the thesis. Sometimes the sequence of ideas shows cause and effect, which appeals to logic. Skeptics can also raise objections to any link in the sequence. Another way to appeal to logos or logic is by using theoretical or abstract language. If you're familiar with a historical theory or a psychological theory, you might use those terms. An audience who is also aware would recognize the vocabulary, and there's appeal to logic happening there. Arguers can appeal to logic by making literary and historical analogies. So they might compare their current argument to a piece of literature that's been published. It could be fiction, it could be nonfiction. They might appeal to logic by comparing their argument to something historical, maybe an issue happening now also was a problem in the past. Another way to appeal to logic is by providing definitions. Including actual data and statistics also appeals to logic. And then citations from experts and authorities appeals to logic as well. The effect on the reader here is logos invokes a cognitive, rational response. Ethos is the part of the argument based on character. Using ethos means the writer or speaker appeals to the audience's sense of ethical behavior. The writer or speaker presents him, her, or their self to the audience as credible, trustworthy, honest, and ethical. Trust resides within the speaker's manner of delivery. When speaking, that might be tone, but also word choice, arrangement of reasons, and sympathy to alternative views. These help shape a trustworthy persona. So ways that arguers utilize ethos, they might create a persona in their writing. They refer to themselves, they use personal I, perhaps they refer to their credentials or their personal experience with the topic. That's one way to establish ethos. They might create common ground with a resistant audience, talking about what they have in common with skeptics before launching into the opposite side of the argument. They use appropriate language to the audience and subject. The level of vocabulary should be at the right level for the audience, so not too high, not too low, and avoiding profanity or anything inappropriate. They offer a restrained, sincere, and fair-minded presentation. So they acknowledge that there are alternative views. They might counter those views, but by acknowledging that there are alternative points of view, this helps establish ethos. Appearing knowledgeable and credible establishes ethos. If evidence is used, it's from credible sources. Sources have been verified and are explained. Grammar can play a role as well. Ethos demonstrates the author's connection to the audience and trustworthiness. Finally, pathos is the part of the argument based on feelings. Using pathos means appealing to readers' emotions and feelings. Arguers create pathos by connecting their claims to readers' values, thus triggering positive or negative emotions. Understanding is a matter of feeling as well as perceiving, which is why someone can convince someone else to act against their own beliefs. So this is something that arguers should be careful about, and the audience should be careful about also, whenever appeals to emotions are high. Sensory details also factor into this. They allow us to see, feel, and taste the reality of the problem. So ways to appeal to pathos: descriptive details help the argument come to life. Narratives as well help readers make connections to real-life moments and emotional examples. Emotional language, notice words like love, hate, fear, etc. Connotation refers to the charge of the words. So the difference between using a word like tragic and using a word like bad. Tragic also evokes connections to terrible events that have been labeled as tragedies. For example, you hear the word tragedy, you might think of the Holocaust. You hear the word bad, you might not have that kind of reaction. So connotation refers to the level of a charge that a word has. Figurative language appeals as well if an arguer uses metaphors or similes or personification that can help bring an argument to life. The effect of pathos on the reader is it evokes an emotional response and helps the argument come to life. Notice in this logos, ethos, pathos visual that the triangle is equilateral. The equal sides and angles illustrate the concept that each appeal is as important as the others. It suggests that a balance of the three is important. Too much of one is likely to produce an argument that readers will either find unconvincing or might cause them to stop reading. If you notice too much pathos, that might turn you off. If you notice too much logos, it might not engage you enough. There's a problem with the ethos of the speaker, you might stop listening or reading. So a balance of all three is often the most effective.